A mysterious disaster destroys all electronics and stops people from sleeping, throwing the world into chaos. Scientists rush to find a cure for the sleeplessness before it becomes deadly and wipes out humanity. It all starts with Jill, who works as a college security guard, but her life is far from easy. One night, she sneaks into a lab to take expired drugs, which she later sells to a man named Greg. When Greg doesn't pay her enough, frustration sets in. Exhausted, she heads to her mother-in-law Doris's house to pick up her kids, Matilda and Noah, who live with Doris because Jill lost custody of them. At Doris's house, Matilda is cheerful and excited to leave, but Noah seems unsure, clinging to Doris. Still, Doris insists they go, saying Jill must bring them back later that day. Jill takes the kids and drives off, trying to reconnect by asking about school. Matilda answers happily, but Noah stays quiet, his distance breaking Jill's heart. While driving, something goes wrong. Jill loses control of the car. She barely avoids a crash, but is hit by a sheriff's car instead, sending her vehicle into a lake. Panic fills the air. Jill fights through the freezing water to pull Noah out, while the sheriff rescues Matilda. On shore, Matilda wakes up, coughing and scared, while the sheriff explains that a power outage has caused cars to malfunction all over the city. He urges Jill to get her head wound treated at the hospital. At the hospital, chaos reigns. Injured people crowd every corner, and Jill struggles to get attention for Matilda, though Matilda insists she's fine. While cleaning her own wound, Jill overhears someone calling for help and follows the voice. She discovers 2 coma patients have suddenly woken up, leaving her stunned. Later, Jill brings the kids back to Doris's house, where Doris offers to let them stay the night. At dinner, Jill worries about Doris's health and asks if she has enough medication. Doris assures her she does, but asks Jill for money for food. Jill, feeling embarrassed, explains she left her money in the car but promises to handle it after work. That night, Jill can't sleep. She wanders into the living room, looking at old family photos. One picture of her late husband, a military man, brings back a flood of memories. Doris joins her, admitting she struggles with insomnia and asking if Jill has any medication to help. Jill, trying to stay on the right path, says she doesn't deal drugs anymore and suggests meditation instead, though Doris dismisses it. Before heading to bed, Jill checks on Matilda, who's sound asleep. But when she looks in on Noah, she finds him wide awake, staring into the dark. The weight of everything presses on Jill's chest as she sits by his side, wishing she could fix the cracks in their little family. Early the next morning, Jill leaves Doris's house for her shift at work. On the way, she runs into Greg, who looks desperate and begs her for more drugs, offering to pay double this time. Jill brushes him off, tired of his antics, and heads to the lab. At the lab, while gathering expired drugs, one of the soldiers catches her in the act of taking drugs and questions her. Nervous, Jill explains she's a former soldier now working as a security guard. Murphy walks in and immediately recognizes Jill. Her face hardens with disappointment when she realizes what Jill is doing. Jill stammers an apology, insisting things aren't as they seem. It's revealed that Jill was discharged from the military years ago because of her struggle with drug addiction. Murphy, however, had helped her turn her life around and even secured her current job at the college. Feeling ashamed, Jill asks Murphy what's going on. Murphy explains that she's setting up a research hub and shares shocking news. Ever since the city's power went out, no one has been able to sleep. Jill is taken aback, unsure how to process the idea of an entire city unable to rest. Murphy notices Jill's reaction and offers her a chance to join the team at the hub, saying they need people like her. But Jill declines, saying she has too much to deal with at home. Before leaving, Murphy hands an address to a man named Brian, one of her team members, and tells him to make sure Jill's family is brought to the hub if things worsen. After Murphy leaves, Brian turns to Jill, urging her to reconsider. He warns her that if the sleeplessness continues, the world could spiral into chaos. Jill waves off his concern, doubting the whole story. She argues that not everyone is affected, pointing out that her daughter Matilda was sleeping earlier. The moment she says it, Jill regrets her words. Brian's eyes narrow, and he immediately suggests that Matilda might need to be studied too. Alarmed, Jill tries to backtrack, insisting it was just a misunderstanding. But Brian's voice turns cold as he says something chilling that, if she's really unconscious, she's not sleeping. She's likely dead. Jill feels her stomach drop, the weight of his words pressing down on her. For the first time, she begins to fear that this isn't just another citywide crisis. This might be something far worse. Panicked, Jill races back to Doris's house, desperate to check on Matilda. When she gets there, she finds Noah alone. Alarmed, she asks where his sister is, and Noah explains that Doris took Matilda to the church. At the church, the pastor delivers a fiery sermon to a restless congregation. A woman sitting beside Doris leans over and whispers to the pastor, telling him that Matilda is awake. Seeing hope in her, the pastor approaches Matilda and speaks gently, telling her she might be the miracle they've been waiting for. When Matilda says she can only sleep if she feels tired, the pastor encourages the congregation to pray for her. Meanwhile, Jill tells Noah they need to get to the church immediately. Before they can leave, Brian arrives at the house, asking if Matilda is okay. Jill, her nerves fraying, lies and says Matilda hasn't been able to sleep either. But Noah, unaware of the danger, innocently reveals that he saw Matilda awake earlier. Jill freezes, realizing her lie has been exposed. Sensing trouble, she grabs Noah and rushes out the door, determined to find her daughter. Brian follows, insisting they take Matilda to Murphy's research hub. Jill refuses, distrustful of Murphy's motives. As they navigate the city, the chaos around them grows more unsettling. People are smashing windows, looting stores, and fighting in the streets. Noah clings to Jill, frightened, as they stumble upon the sheriff's lifeless body. When Noah asks what's happening, Jill explains in a shaky voice that people are suffering the effects of severe sleep deprivation. She says that it's driving them mad, urging Noah to move faster. They finally reach the church, where the congregation is gathered around Matilda, preparing to pray for her. Jill pushes through the crowd, shouting that she's taking her daughter home, but the pastor steps in her way, insisting Matilda could help save everyone. A woman from the crowd speaks up, pointing out that Jill has no legal right to take Matilda since Doris has custody. Brian, trying to de-escalate, suggests taking Matilda to Murphy's hub instead. This only fuels the pastor's anger, who accuses Murphy of wanting to exploit Matilda as a test subject. The tension in the room thickens, with the congregation split between the pastor and Brian. When Brian warns the pastor he'll report the church to the military, things take a dark turn. Deputy Sheriff Jim, standing with the pastor, pulls out his gun and shoots Brian in front of everyone. Jill and Noah watch in horror as Brian collapses to the ground, his lifeless eyes a grim reminder of how far things have spiraled. Jill clutches Noah tightly, her heart racing. The world around them is unraveling, and now more than ever, she knows she must do whatever it takes to protect her children. As Jill and Noah are surrounded by inmates, she fires her last bullet to scare them off. The men realize she's out of ammo, but before they can act, Dodge unexpectedly returns with the car and urges them to get in. Jill, still wary, tries to use the empty gun to intimidate Dodge, but he disarms her and takes the car key after stopping to refuel. While Jill teaches Matilda how to pump gas, Dodge changes into new clothes and chats with Noah, learning about Jill's plans to prepare Matilda for survival. Dodge decides to follow them north, claiming it's his destination too. As they continue their journey, Jill begins teaching Matilda how to drive, but Dodge dismisses her reliance on books, saying they're just other people's ideas and should be burned. Jill rebukes him and tells Matilda to focus. They encounter a group of savages who attack the car, breaking a window, but Jill takes control and drives them to safety. Closer to the hub, Jill insists Dodge leave them, not wanting him to know her plans. She tells her kids to stay near a house with food while she checks if the hub is safe. Disguised as a doctor, Jill sneaks into the hub, finds the woman who can sleep, and tries to convince her to help Matilda. The woman, however, claims she doesn't know why she can sleep and was expected to die months ago. Jill's infiltration is interrupted by Murphy, who questions her presence. Jill lies, saying she came after finding Brian's address. Murphy reluctantly welcomes her to the team, admitting progress is slow and humanity may not survive. Jill, overwhelmed, steps outside and is horrified to see Dodge driving into the hub with Matilda and Noah. The children are captured, and Matilda reveals she can sleep, prompting Murphy and another doctor, Katz, to begin experiments. The doctors plan to compare Matilda's brain activity with an animal's, but the test subject dies during the experiment. Murphy coldly suggests using Noah as the next subject. Jill, already on edge, starts hallucinating Noah, accusing her of failing them. Snapping out of it, she tries to intervene as soldiers take Noah. Chaos erupts when a soldier, hallucinating an attack, begins a killing spree. leading other soldiers to turn on each other. Jill narrowly escapes death and finds Katz arguing with Murphy about sacrificing Matilda. Katz kills Murphy to stop her. Meanwhile, Dodge sacrifices himself to save Noah from another soldier. Noah crawls away but ends up electrocuting himself while playing with a live wire. Matilda retrieves a defibrillator, but when she and Jill use it to revive Noah, the shock also affects them. The next morning, Jill remains wide-eyed and struggling to stay awake as Noah regains consciousness, claiming he dreamed. As Jill grows weaker, a U.S. Coast Guard officer arrives with a gun. Jill protects her kids and pleads for their safety, convincing the officer to lower his weapon. The family prepares to leave the hub, but Matilda notices the sheriff's badge Jill had earlier and connects it to the defibrillator. Matilda suddenly recalls that drowning in the lake temporarily reset her when the sheriff revived her. She theorizes that short-term cardiac arrest might cure sleep deprivation. Desperate, the siblings decide to try the method on Jill. They drag her into a lake, hold her underwater until she drowns, and then pull her out. After performing chest compressions, they hear Jill gasp for air, alive and seemingly cured. This is how Jill saves her family and everything gets back to normal. This is Buff Recaps. Stay safe, and thanks for watching.